What's the worst movie you've seen from start to finish? Minot's Hands of Fate. I was told the stuck version was going to be funny. Movie caused me physical pain. The stuck version makes it humanly watchable. Even then it's a hard task to get through it. Hellraiser 4. Then 5. Then 6, 7, 8. Then after 9, I had a renewed appreciation for 4 to 7. I refuse to watch the new one. The worst part is, I've seen them all more than once. Do you hate yourself? Ballistic, X vs. Sever. The best thing I can say about this movie is that I completely forgot it even existed until this very moment. It's called The Horse Dancer. It's about a gymnast who, for some reason, goes to a horse camp. It's basically an advertisement for a real riding camp, and features some of the worst dialogue and acting I have ever seen in my life. One scene that stands out is the head counselor absolutely losing her shit because someone did something that put the camp at risk. Total overacting. 10/10ths entertainment. Tina Belche has entered the chat. Skyline. 90% of the movie is just them cowering in a high-rise apartment. The end credits are far better than the movie. I know it's a meme at this point, but Dragon Ball Evolution is genuinely fucking awful. Even if you aren't a fan of the anime, manga, which, full disclosure, I grew up with and loved, it's just hot garbage. I only sat through the entirety of it because my friend asked me to watch it with him. I don't think I'll ever fully understand Hollywood and their reasoning for drastically changing a piece of media from its source material. At the end of the day it only had surface level similarities. It's like, why even call it by its original title then? To pull in the original fans? They're gonna hate it the moment the trailer drops. I just don't get it. Lol, fun fact, I worked on that movie, VFX. It's the only credit I've ever removed from my IMDb. This past weekend, my son had his birthday, and he wanted to go to a scary movie with his friends. The only movie that looked remotely scary was Gretel and Hansel. It was not scary. It was bad. It was opening night, and a grand total of about 12 people were in the theater. It was so boring, at least a quarter left before it was half over. There's a plot twist near the end. For most movies, you think, wow, I didn't see that coming. Or I totally saw that coming. In this movie, you just think, well, that happened. It landed like a dead salmon tossed on wet concrete. It was awful. It landed like a dead salmon tossed on wet concrete. I love your use of simile. The latest Sherlock Holmes film with Will Ferrell. The movie started with about 20 people, but I was the only one who stuck around long enough to see the end credits. When I saw this in theaters as well, when it was over, some guy behind me said to his buddies, well, that's 2 hours of my life I'll never get back. That animated movie, Alpha and Omega. Such a mess. I'm not allowed to choose the movie anymore with my family. Did you know there are 7 sequels? Battlefield Earth. I was taking a minibus from Christchurch to Dunedin and there was a TV at the front and a selection of DVDs including Battlefield Earth. The driver asked the passengers which one we should watch and I said not Battlefield Earth, it's supposed to be terrible. He thought it would be so bad it's good, so put it on. God, it was dire. When it was my stop and he went to get my luggage, he actually apologized and said he should have listened. Wait. The driver was watching the movie? Fantastic Four, 2015. Legitimately went, that's it? At the end, 95% of the movie is boring uninterested dialogue, 5% boss fight. The Last Airbender. I was a big fan of the show. So when the movie came out I convinced my friends to go and see it. They were skeptical at first but I was sure they would like it. It was the Avatar after all. And then it started, and it was absolute shit. I never cringed so hard in my entire life. Every time I thought it can't get any worse, the movie proved me otherwise. Worst of all, it wasn't even funny bad, it was incredibly boring and cringy, and it just kept on going. I still feel bad that I made them watch it. I felt a similar way when I first saw the movie. Shyamalan just bucked the whole series, and all the characters' names. Like YTF do they pronounce hang on. Food fight my dudes. Easily the ugliest thing ever created. Also clearly aimed at children, but so many bad sexual puns. Isn't the story that they literally lost the files for the movie and then had to recreate it with no budget? Hence the terrible The third Jeepers Creepers. Say what you want about the first and second, I see those as classic with a hint of dark comedy. But the third? Trash. The Swimmer, 1968. It's a full-length movie based on a short story. It's about a dude who walks through the woods into his friends' backyards, talks to them for a bit, then swims across their pool, and goes to the next house. My dad keeps it recorded on our TV as a way to get guests to leave our house. I feel like you did a too good job of describing it. Now I want to see it. In the Name of the King? I figure it stars Jason Statham. I'm a sucker for his movies, plus a bunch of other big names: Burt Reynolds, Ray Liotta, Ron Perlman, etc. How bad can it be? I figure it would be a cookie-cutter medieval movie with some badass Statham head kicks. OMG. It's so bad. Like so bad. No U-Bowl movie should ever be watched. Got to be Highlander 2. A sequel that isn't just unnecessary, but completely craps all over the emotional beats of the original and ruins everything by giving a half-baked explanation to things nobody needed answers to. My wife and I turned it off after watching and declared that it didn't happen and doesn't exist. It's that bad. You should see Highlander 5: The Source. It's so bad that the climactic end fight has to be seen to be believed. Grown men came up with this. Spoiler alert: Duncan MacLeod simply runs around the Guardian of the Quickening Source so fast that the guard. The Circle. The one with Tom Hanks and Emma Watson. I was so disappointed in that movie. The cast should have been great, and the book was great, but that movie was just WTF. After Earth starring Will and Jaden Smith. It was 2 hours of watching Jaden not listen to his father in a life-or-death situation, and whining and crying when not following said instructions almost killed him. I think I was mostly disappointed because of the hype I'd seen about the movie. Promos and behind-the-scenes interviews prior to the movie's release discussed some deep lore that got me really excited, but I never saw it reflect in the story's plot or any footage. Apparently, everyone was about the same skin color because a few hundred years into the future, everyone is supposed to be the same skin tone because of globalization and ease of access to interracial relationships, and a linguist was supposedly hired for this movie to create an accent that carefully combined the majority of the accents of the world if they were all merged into one nation. It must not have been a particularly good linguist, because Will and Jaden ended up sounding like two people who were bad at impersonating Victorian English. Then they would hop in and out of using it, so at times, they just basically spoke a present-day American accent. Almost like the director just went, "You know what? The accent is dumb and we have 2 more hours on set today and 3 more scenes to shoot, just talk like normal people." It was just such a bummer because I liked Karate Kid. Jaden did a fantastic job despite being so young, and I really liked Will Smith. The movie just wasn't very good. Edit, so someone just notified me that it was directed by M. Night Shyamalan? So there's your reason right there why it wasn't that great. I will never forget the most scathing review I read of that movie, where someone pointed out that Will and Jaden are father and son, and yet they have absolutely zero on-screen chemistry. Left Behind 2014 with Nick Cage. I watched the whole thing hoping it would get better. It did not. Edit, I should add that I didn't read anything about the movie and went in thinking it was just an action thriller. They completely ripped apart the source material, book, not Kirk Cameron movie, and made a movie out of, IIRC, about the first 20 to 30% of the book. It can't even be described as awful. That would be too generous to the film. I enjoyed the full series of books, but man, it just does not seem like a series that could ever be made adequately due to their probable pushback. Looks like the director has the rights to try a full adaptation of the series, but I see no chance of it ever happening with that first offering. Emoji Movie, and before you ask, my brother's wife downloaded it for a weekend trip without service. I watch every movie with Patrick Stewart in it. This is the only time I've regretted that. Jack and Jill. I'm mad I had to scroll this far to find this. Birdemic. The acting. The CGI. There are no words. Lol, was this movie purposely made bad? I can't imagine their reason for actually showing the characters commute to different locations. Giggly. It was absolutely awful. Terrible writing, wooden acting, showcasing J-Lo and a full X romance. The soundtrack was designed by taping tracks to a dartboard. The only bright spot in the entire movie is when Christopher Walken randomly wanders on set and spouts nonsense, then leaves as suddenly as he arrived. However, 1 minute of levity doesn't make up for the other 2 hours. I convinced my friend that I genuinely liked it. He watched it, then yelled at me about how awful it was. I somehow talked him into giving it a second chance. He was not happy with me. Has anybody seen the movie Ant-Boy, or was that just a fever dream I had? Oh. I remember seeing that on Netflix. My little brother wanted to watch Ant-Man because I told him it was good, and she turned Ant-Boy on instead, thinking they were the same. Was it dubbed from another language or something? Transformers: The Last Night. The only reason I didn't walk out was because my brother was there. I later found out that he wanted to leave too, but the only reason he didn't was because I was there. It was horrific. The tragedy of the Transformers movies for me was that I wanted to love them. I can't stand any of them. Human Centipede 3. I had no idea they made a third. I actually sort of enjoyed the first one, but I gave up on the second one. The part where he tries to get that girl in the car and she gives birth while he's attacking her, then she mashes on the baby stuck under her gas pedal was just a little too much for me. That and the whole black and white, mentally handicapped vibe was just too weird. Avatar: The Last Airbender. Seriously, fuck that M. Night Shyamalan guy. He's to the whole Avatar series what D&D is to GOT Season 8. Same. Me and my brother went to the midnight premiere of this. Lots of people, everybody was excited. We met this group of guys as we waited to enter the theater who had on red and blue hoodies, hoods up, pretending to be Water and Fire Tribe. My brother and I happened to have on red hoodies too, and they asked us to help join their battle, and we all pretend bended with our hoods up, and it was so nerdy and I had a blast. Then we all watched the movie. Saw the dudes leaving with hoods down looking so sad. The most recent Mummy movie. I was high as fuck with my brother and his roommate when we watched it, and it was the biggest heap of garbage. Some people left in the middle of it. We were laughing at super unrealistic scenes. It's a joke of a movie. It's very, very awful. The problem with that movie is that it was supposed to be the first movie of a cinematic universe featuring classic monsters. Which is awesome, but they focused so much on the cinematic universe that they completely neglected to tell a good story and instead focused on overblown visuals and goofy action to subsidize on the bad plot. Universal fucked themselves over. They wanted a cinematic universe so badly that they rushed it too far and shot themselves in the foot. That's what happens when you want to compete with MCU but fail to see what makes the MCU so great. Hell, the reason why the MCU worked is that they didn't actively focus so much on trying to shoehorn the idea aside from mid-credit scenes and some small tidbits of info. Hell, it took me years to realize that the Incredible Hulk actually confirmed the idea of Captain America, 4 years before the first Cap movie came out. And then you have The Mummy, which practically screams into your face that Dr. Jekyll is here. Adam Sandler's Jack and Jill. I've watched a ton of terrible movies and this is by far the least enjoyable. Not a single funny moment in a comedy, a horrible premise, horrible acting, painful dialogue, and Al Pacino making a total ass out of himself. It's beyond horrible. Pacino was in a movie with Walken and Alan Arkin. I forgot the title. Dreadful. I can't believe the garbage getting made.